whatever you are doing, there are going to be low times, there are going to be great times. Just keep going.
Our featured speaker today is passionate about building advanced preventative mental health care and well-being solutions in India. She's the co-founder of ManoShala, a mental health service organization that seeks to make individuals feel valued, engaged, and supported throughout their therapeutic experience. Kritika, it's a great pleasure to have you as our featured guest today. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your journey with us.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today.
Would you mind starting us off telling us a little bit about maybe some of your experience growing up and what you feel are some of like the most influential either events or people that kind of put you on the path that you are now?
So just to, kind of bring everyone together, I'm running a mental health and well-being startup in India for now more than 3 years. And we have a client base of more than 10,000 people. We are working with corporates, individuals, NGOs, and etc. Now, to begin with, where all of this motivation is coming from, or, what are the strongest events in my life which might have motivated where I am today? Essentially, as a child, I had gone through physical harassment, sexual harassment. And that, I think, had impacted me so much. So basically, I used to have, nightmares, and I used to have flashbacks. And there were a lot of things that used to come to my mind when growing up, living with that challenge in my life. So, of course, at that time, I never knew that this is going to impact me so much. The later stages of my life, when I realized what I was going through, I think that definitely is a very, very challenging time, or, a time that has shaped my life significantly. If I have to call out other events in my life or other people in my life who have played a very, very important role, that would be, I think, to begin with, would be my father, who is kind of shown or, has guided me always with a positive light in my life. Whatever the issues are there in your life, you have to remain positive about the entire approach and things can be resolved. And then there was a professor at my college who was kind of CEO of Akshay Patra, if all of us follow Akshay Patra. So he was my mentor in my college. And I think he really motivated me to do a lot of stuff and think about combining my social aspirations, like, my social entrepreneurship with my passion for other stuff. And he kind of showed me the path to combine both the things and do what I love, at the same time find a living with that as well. I think those two events, or, those two people I can call, has been very, very important.
Thanks so much for sharing. I think that's amazing that you can find those mentors to help guide you along the way. I know it's something that everybody kind of looks for and strives for, and in certain ways has either formally asked or just kind of naturally moved into that position of finding a mentor. So it's really nice to hear that you were able to find such wonderful mentors early on as you were starting to drive that combination of passion and social good with entrepreneurship. I guess to that point, what inspired you to get into entrepreneurship in the first place? Why was that the path to take instead of going somewhere else and working in social services or mental health services at a company or organization? What specifically about entrepreneurship drove you to take that path?
It's a very good question, actually, because, like anyone, it's a very natural question to come, really, because, anyone who wants to do something social, they can also join a company. Then why being an entrepreneur was important? So I think why I always want to be an entrepreneur, even if when I was in college, I wasn't looking for a job. I was looking to become an entrepreneur. Even when I was in my school, I used to do a lot of things which were my own, and I didn't want to do internships a lot. And I think one of the largest reasons for that would be my upbringing, to be very simply put, because I come from a family where, there are owned businesses. So, it could be that feeling altogether that I am the one who can do this, who want to do this, but now I have to kind of think of which career path I want to choose or which field do I want to do this. So for me personally, if I have to call it out, it has to do a lot with my upbringing. It has to do a lot with, what I saw as a child, that people around me were motivated to do businesses. People around me were doing different startups. And I think that caught me there. And I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. I want to do things on my own. And on the top of it, I feel that when you are passionate about something, when you want to bring that change, doing it on your own is significantly different as compared to doing it with someone else, because then a lot of ideologies somewhere get compromised. At the second level, I would say that I don't think that there are a lot of mental health companies in India as of now who are at a level of, we can kind of say that are the aspirational companies also in India. So it could, two of these reasons, like my upbringing and absence of, great companies with regards to mental health in India, could be two reasons for me to do it on my own.
I really appreciate that you had such a concrete answer to that, because I know sometimes, we have such a drive to do something. We have such a passion for a subject, but it's hard to articulate it. And you did it so beautifully. I am joining from Southern California, US, but I hope to take away some strategies to either talk to other entrepreneurs that I meet through this community, through the alumni community, as well as my own wellness clients that can help them sort of think through some of the stigmas that surround addressing our mental health, because I personally have seen how tied together physical and mental health is. And I really do believe that we live better, more successful lives when we address both. And to that point, I was wondering what made you really decide that, you talked about what made you want to become an entrepreneur and kind of in this topic, but what made you decide that this was the kind of organization you wanted to start, that you really wanted to do it deep? Because there's a lot of different ways you could try to improve people's mental health. Was there anything that drove you to this particular business model?
Very good question, because, that takes me back to those moments when I was taking those decisions for myself. So, these questions are not generally asked at a lot of places, right? I think that has, again, to do a lot with my journey as a person, because especially when it comes to the model that we're talking about, where we have, 125 therapists on our platform, and anyone, anywhere in India, even from the smallest town of India, can book their services, their psychologist, find a psychiatrist, etc. Now, one of the reasons is that I was kind of, going through that journey where one of my sisters got into mental health disorder, and then my own mother got into anxiety. That was a moment when I was searching for psychologists and psychiatrists in India, and I wasn't able to. I was in a small town in India and I had no option. There were only general physicians which I could find in my hometown. There was no services available online, and we were struggling to find a simple psychologist. That was my moment. That was the time when I decided this is missing, and you got to do something about it. And be like this. If I am having, by God's grace, I kind of have resources in India. If I am having problem finding a psychologist in India, I don't know what is happening with people who kind of do not have such kind of resources. So I wanted to make at least the bare minimum, which is therapy, available for people wherever in India. Town in India, be it the largest town, should have access to basic therapy services. And it is not just, that person who's going through mental health issue, their life is challenged. But I wanted to kind of bring those elements during my, solution, that not just you, but we're also focusing on the caregiver's journey. And we kind of brought those elements in our business model, that come and book the therapist, but you are going to know a lot more about the therapist at the personal and the professional level, along with the guidance that you can get to understand what do you want to really do. So it's not a marketplace. It said it really well that, I could have chosen many other parts, but I feel that this was the basic thing which was missing. I couldn't find it anywhere when my mother was going through it. And I think that was my biggest challenge and the motivation for me to take the path that I have taken and the solution that I'm still trying to mature.
I think that's excellent. I really like that, one, that this was born out of a need, right? So it's born out of a personal need, which kind of helps drive that motivation to build this or to create a solution for that problem. I also love the fact that you're focusing not just on the patient, but also the therapist as well, and trying to build a relationship between them. I think that can be missing, especially through an online platform. right? You miss that personal connection in some ways. And I think that's a lot of what makes therapy or mental health solutions successful. It's just building that one-on-one relationship with your therapist and starting to think about how that actually impacts that person's mental health. With that being said, something I'd love to learn a little bit about more is just starting a company around aggregating mental health professionals. That's got to be pretty daunting. Like, at least I know in the US, thinking about just licensing, finding the right types of therapists for the right types of mental health challenges. How did you kind of start? What was kind of the starting point for pulling all this together and kind of building that network? And also kind of part of that is thinking about the challenges, right, and the hurdles that you may have with making sure you have the right types of therapists.
Yes. So I think that was one of the biggest challenge for me, frankly, to find the right and the quality in the qualified therapist, because I am not a therapist. I am not a psychologist. I am not a clinical psychologist. Nor I come from a medical background. I come from an engineer background with an MBA, right? Was the biggest challenge that how do I find the right people to justify the solutions and the services that I want to provide to the people, the quality that I want to provide. Now, for me, the beginning point was to kind of read about this. So first thing that I did was to read about it from everywhere, anywhere, wherever I could read about it. First, the MIT bootcamp, definitely, because during that bootcamp, I did a project on mental health with the professors, I think, which really helped me because they kind of told me how to think about this industry when I don't have any knowledge about this industry. So one of the things I did was I interviewed 300 psychologists in India before getting into this business. So I kind of spoke to these psychologists. First of all, I kind of did a Google form everywhere and I asked people if they can volunteer short interview or, short discussion with me. And I wanted to start my own company. So that's how I started kind of getting interest of people. And over a period of 3 months, I was able to interview 300 psychologists and psychiatrists in India. And I think that really pushed me to get the knowledge on ground because they were able to highlight the issues with the current ecosystem. They were also able to tell me the good things that were happening in the ecosystem. That was my beginning to simply, I just put a Google form out there to everyone whoever wanted to kind of do this interview with me. Of course, I used my alumni networks. I also worked with MIT and they also connected with a few psychologists in the US during my boot camp as well. So I kind of got it there. And then lastly, I put it on all my social media networks. And I kind of also put it in doctor network, whoever I had. So I was able to interview 300 psychologists and psychiatrists. And that was my beginning point to start understanding this industry. Now, of course, that was not enough for me, right? Then I started kind of having an advisor on board who was a senior clinical psychologist and who helped me to kind of start doing these technical rounds. So whenever we are hiring any psychologist on the system, we do not kind of ask you to go and just register you as a vendor. No, not at all. We kind of do a 4 round of interviews for them. First interview is with me for me to understand the entire ideology of that person. Second is with a clinical psychologist. Third is with a counseling psychologist. And fourth is a final interview where we again kind of discuss the other professional aspects of that psychologist. After that, once the psychologist is into our system, and after that, we kind of do 3 months of probationer or internship where we kind of ensure that we are getting feedback about that psychologist or about the doctor whom we have hired from the clients. Do a very, very close-knitted, feedback system. Because I understand, if my mom is getting a psychologist who's not right or maybe who's not, therapeutically aligned, it's a problem, and it's a problem for her life. It's not just a problem, that I didn't get the right product, but it's a problem that will affect her for life. That was my idea, like I need to get the right quality therapist. Now the verification not just starts at the entry, but it also kind of goes through the system.
Yeah, thank you so much for articulating the entire process, that you envisioned and kind of how you've put that vision into place. These are definitely some of the hurdles that I imagine. And I think it's amazing that you have such a large network of therapists. But I was also imagining as you were talking that it's pretty difficult to have therapists that specialize in every area. So from your end, how do you decide if you should refer someone outside of your network to get more specialized support? in a case where it is something that, none of your therapists really specialize in, or how do you make that determination?
That's a very deep challenge of the industry that you've mentioned, Nancy. That, of course, and it's not just for mental health, but it is for every industry that you cannot provide solution to all. You've got to choose your niche, and that's what we were told at the MIT bootcamp also, that do not, as an entrepreneur, do not get into the, cycle of doing everything. You have to kind of first decide whom you are able to cater. And after that, you can kind of vertically or horizontally. One of the things which I knew, or I kind of wanted to do, is that I know that anxiety, and of course you need to have that business calculation also, otherwise you will be out of the system very soon. So we know that anxiety and depression is the largest causes of mental health issues in India right now. So first we have started with anxiety and depression, and slowly we are getting into different fields of mental health as well. Now, when it comes to, of course, there are issues like borderline personality disorder or bipolar, which come into our system and we are not able to cater to that system. For that, we have collaborations with different hospitals or, different doctors, psychiatrists, etc., where we kind of refer the cases to.
I think that's excellent. I do really like that you have chosen, although, large area of mental health, right? Anxiety, depression aren't small areas. And I think, your point that the majority of people in India, I'd say the majority of people worldwide that suffer from some sort of mental health is probably depression and anxiety to some form. And so I love that you kind of found that niche to start with, and you don't just ignore other patients potentially, but you actually help triage them to other professionals as they go through that process. Because I think that's much needed, really, especially in healthcare, when you have to say, okay, this is beyond my scope and realm of capabilities, or our realm of capabilities. We need to bring in someone else. And it's very tough to reach that point of knowing when the right time is. So I'm glad that you've kind of started to figure that out and set those clear guidelines within. So really appreciate that.
Like you mentioned, it was not easy for me to get here. Like, it was not easy for me to decide that we want to do anxiety and depression only. We did in the beginning, we were kind of sliding that, okay, let's do this case also. Let's take this case also. Because, people are in trouble and we cannot say no, right? So initially we had those issues where we were not able to kind of define our scope and define that this, this is what we want to kind of work for right now, or this is the capability we have. So very well put, we did go through that churning cycle where we were deciding, okay, this is where we want to get into, this is where we don't want to get into. And frankly, it takes time. In the beginning, 1 year, 2 years, we were struggling via this. Now that we've matured in this ecosystem, we understand our capabilities and we are able to kind of match them with our resources. But otherwise, it's not like that in the first month or 2 months, you were able to decide that. You have to go through that cycle on your own.
As you were going through that process, did you have anything in place to begin with that said, okay, if this is out of our comfort zone, our scope, we should send it off? Did you already have kind of a network of other mental health professionals in hospitals, et cetera, that could take on some of those cases that you didn't see equipped for? I know obviously finding your niche kind of came as time went, but at least did you have a safety net to begin with to say, okay, if we get in over our heads with something, what's our next step? Or did that come with time as well?
Initially, when this started to happen, that we were getting cases which we were not able to handle, we were kind of looking, whenever the case used to come, we were on the field, we were looking for experts. And that happened for a short period of time with us, where kind of, there were suicidal ideation cases, or maybe, there were cases with self-harm or, actual crisis management. In those situations, we did have to look initially, very, very initial stage, where we had to kind of look for suicidologists. And there are very less suicidologists in India, by the way. So we have to kind of do a very, very aggressive and quick research and getting them onboarded. But that was our first step to do. That if there is any crisis call coming to ManoShala, there should be a suicidologist, or there should be a crisis intervention person who can take that call immediately. So that was our first understanding that, hey, this is out of our system. We are not capable for this, but we need to have a support system for this, right? And that was number one. After that, we started building our network otherwise also with different hospitals in India, with psychiatrists or with psychologists who are able to handle these things. Now we have a kind of a system where we understand, okay, if this is the case which is coming, where it should go, or which psychiatrist it should go. Even though I come from a very small town and we are not able to cater to that, because a lot of times people want offline or in-person therapy sessions, and we are not able to cater to that. Now, in India, at a very remote location where there are no doctors, forget about having a psychiatrist or a psychologist, there are no general physicians also there. Now, to provide an offline session in that locality is not possible for us. So either we tell them that you take an online session with our psychologist, or we kind of provide them the nearest location that they can travel to. But yes, there have been cases where the patient has not agreed to anything, and we have to kind of let go of those situations also.
Hello all. Unfortunately, I couldn't be part of this amazing discussion with Kritika, but I hope you're enjoying it. I wanted to ask you, our listeners, if you could give us a review in your podcasting platform of choice. We don't run ads and don't have sponsors, but are looking to grow. So if you feel we bring value to your listening experience, please drop us a review when you can. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for taking us through that. I really think that it can't be easy to figure out where to draw those lines. I think a lot of entrepreneurs that have a topic that they're really passionate about have trouble, deciding what their niche is going to be. But I really appreciate how much thought and energy and research you've put into, making sure that the group of people that you serve is very well served, and that you really do understand what your scope is. And I also really appreciated that you articulated that you're not a therapist yourself, and you really rely on the expertise of your therapist, because as someone who is also not a therapist, but also kind of rides that line, where I am helping people that probably need a little bit more therapeutic support, you really have to figure out, how to stay in your lane and be effective, which it sounds like you really, really are. While you were kind of describing that, I was thinking, in the US, we have a couple of services that I see advertised regularly that offer remote therapy. And one of the things that they really plug in their ads is that they allow you to change your therapist at any time. And I always kind of I can't help but think of both sides of this, because I see this making therapy really accessible to a certain group of people, but I can also picture that some people wind up therapist hopping so much that it can become detrimental. So I guess I'm wondering, how you feel about this sort of model yourself, because it sounds like you're really focused on making sure that people are so well matched with their therapist.
So that's a very, very actually tough question because we are trying to solve a problem with specific to, ensuring that there is a therapeutic alliance between the client and the therapist in the first place. Because one of the largest issues that anyone who wants to come to therapy faces is that what if they go to a therapist with whom there is no therapeutic alliance, and then the therapy works backwards for them. They don't want to go to any other therapist, because what happens, they have kind of explained their issue to one therapist, second therapist, third therapist, and now they don't want to do it anymore because it's emotionally exhausting for them, right? I totally get it. So this is one side of the problem. I wouldn't say the exact answer to your question, but one side of the problem, that what we are doing is we are using machine learning for therapeutic alliance. So of course, it's a long way to go, but we are building a system where we can kind of understand the personality and the issue and the severity of the issue of the patient, along with the capability or the personality of the therapist, and match them. We still have a lot to work on that algorithm, but this is now what happens a lot of time is that a client is working with a therapist, and in the middle of the therapy, they feel like therapeutic sessions, they feel like that, hey, this therapist is not working with me. And of course, we provide them with full accessibility to choose any other therapist in our system. I think that is important also, but at the same time, we also understand that it's the client doing this again and again with different therapists. So what happens? So one side is that, yes, client is not feeling comfortable with this therapist. There is something which is not working out, and it's completely fine to change the therapist, which is okay. Another side of the story is that there is a client in the system, for example, for an year. And in that year, we have seen that the client has changed therapist 5 times. Now we need to identify the client not comfortable with the therapist, or the client is not able to cope up with therapy, or the client needs something else, some other kind of intervention. And in that situation, what we do is we sometimes also propose creative art therapy as an expression for them. Now, what is creative art therapy? So creative art therapy is that therapy via a medium of music, therapy via a medium of art, therapy via a medium of drama, psychodrama, or therapy via a medium of movement. Now, we also kind of start to understand that maybe talk therapy is not working with this client. It has nothing to do with the therapist, but it has to do with the type of therapy which is getting into the system for that client, which is not working out. Now, our care team starts to identify that should we kind of expose this client to any other medium of therapy? Maybe talk therapy is not, the way of expression for this client. So, these are certain things that we take care of. But one most important aspect of, the entire journey is that our care team, which is also made of psychologists, they kind of look into each and every client very closely to support them the journey of therapy or in the journey of healing. So like we don't leave them alone that, hey, you have booked therapy, now we have nothing to do with you. You work with the psychologist. No. If you are getting the therapist booked via ManoShala, we have some sense of responsibility there. And our psychologists who are in-house psychologists, they kind of try to ensure that the way you are feeling, the way you are kind of going about your therapy sessions, you're in a growth journey. So a lot of time our care team also asks, hey, you have had already 16 sessions. Why is it not working for you? Or, can we do something? We start asking questions from the therapist also that can we do something about it? Because usually within 16 to 18 sessions, it's typically, the research says that typically it should start, the direction should be a positive direction. The health should not degrade at least, right? And if that is happening, you are becoming dependent on your therapist rather than being on a journey of independence or, being self-dependent. It's also a question again for us. So these are certain things that we kind of keep in mind while we are building our system. But of course, with scale, complexities are increasing for us, and we have to kind of ensure how do we keep this close-knitted solution for our people.
Thanks so much for sharing. I love that insight, right? And the idea that you're able to not just abandon someone if it's not working, right? Or let them to figure it out on their own, but really taking those additional steps to see, are there alternative therapies that we can provide? Even to your point of you may just be becoming dependent on your therapist rather than doing an independent journey, right? And so thinking through those nuances and kind of that later stage in the journey for your clients, I think that's amazing, and you've really put a lot of time and effort into that thought process. And you mentioned this at the very end there, and I'm wondering if you can just touch more on it, because I do think that your point, like scaling this can be very difficult. Thinking through just scaling this model and this almost personalized therapy, how have you found that challenging in and of itself? Do you have any sort of, I'll say, legal challenges as well? I know mental health, at least in the US, is a very regulated industry, and there's been some backlash from some of the online services. But what have you found the biggest challenge in growing and scaling?
Very clear challenges for us right now, because we are in the position where we are scaling up. We are launching our app 10th of October, which is International Mental Health Day. One of the challenges is that how do we keep that personalization in place? Irrespective, there is app, there is whatever, there are lakhs of clients we are serving tomorrow, but how do we keep that personalization? Because for me, impact is very important. And I feel that because I have my mom who suffers from anxiety, and I know when she calls me up, she's crying on phone, I know how it feels. And I genuinely feel that unless the personalization aspect is not there, maybe I'm a marketplace, maybe, I'm just like Amazon, where there are products, there are things, but there's no personalization for you. And I don't think so mental health is meant for that. I genuinely don't think so. So I don't know what the solution is right now for that. But what I know is that I am going to make sure that things are personalized for all the people who are moving to ManoShala. And I know that I'm going to scale also. I have that in my mind that we are going to kind of, scale these services, and we are on that path. We have to make sure that these are personalized. And at the same time, about data, because data regulation, that's a very, very important question. Now, about data regulation in India, as of now, there are few acts that we have to follow, which we are following as which are required in terms of personalization of the privacy of the client's information, which is why the care team that we have are also a group of psychologists. We don't have anyone who has information on client which is not a psychologist, and the client is not approved. So one thing that we always keep in mind is that, which of course is a bit cost heavy for us, because having a psychologist do the work of a care team as compared to anyone else is a cost heavy, but I feel that is important. Now, coming to the point about data regulation in UK, yes, we have served a few clients in UK, few companies for that matter, where we have done some group workshops for those companies, and we are still doing some group workshops. So we are still not getting into personalized therapy in UK because we are still a bit far away from kind of getting completely the GDPR and everything for us. But yes, we are serving the companies who are taking group sessions with us, which does not include any disclosure of personal information on any of the people who are joining. These are more relaxation sessions. These are more meditation, mindfulness, music-based sessions. These are more to do with managing your burnout, managing stress, and etc. But yes, privacy of information is definitely one of the largest issues in India also right now when it comes to mental health. And I feel keeping the information confidential is very, very important because people are sharing deep truths about themselves. And if you are able to relate that truth with a person's face or whatever, the place, it's a problem. And beyond that, there are multiple layers to data privacy, like multiple layers, not just this, but I'm yet to solve these problems, frankly. So I wouldn't be able to give the perfect answer for that right now.
I can definitely see where, your technical background comes in handy here because, even though you're dealing with such like a personal experience, you are also dealing with all of this data. And I think it's awesome that you thought kind of from day one about how you're going to handle this. I hope that helps you branch into other markets because, as Matt said, I know that it can be difficult to try in the US, especially. There's a lot of barriers, but I really, really respect the work that you're doing. And kind of going back to when you were describing some of your services, that's something we haven't really asked you about. I love that you do things like creative art therapy. And I know that you offer, a lot of other types of therapy that are considered less conventional than talk therapy. And I was wondering how you decided which ones to offer, which ones would be good options for clients who are working through anxiety and depression. Was it just kind of like testing and seeing how it goes, or did you look to, research that was already out there?
This point of, kind of decision on that is by the psychologist whom they've been seeing. So that's basically a prescription kind of a thing that comes from them that maybe this client is more aligned for this kind of expression because they've gone through certain kind of therapy sessions. So that is our first and major point of taking a decision kind of situation. That's what we follow as. Or is it coming from the client? Sometimes it comes from the client directly.
Yeah, thanks so much for that answer. That makes a lot of sense to me. So it sounds like you're really honoring who your therapists are too as therapists and allowing them to do what they're really good at. So I don't want to forget to ask you this question because you explained it earlier. Can you talk about the story behind naming your organization and what the name means?
So when I was, kind of doing the research and we were building this company, the initial phases, we were nameless. We didn't know what to call this company, right? Then, of course, we wanted to have a meaning out of it and we didn't want to put anything out there for us. So we did a lot of in that and then we kind of came up to the name ManoShala. So basically, ManoShala is divided into two names. So when these two things come together, Sanskrit and Hindi words, that's when this name becomes one. So essentially, Mano is mind or heart, right? Your brain or heart, that is Manu, and Shala in Hindi is school. So it's basically school of heart or brain. So that's what ManoShala really is. It's a different name. It's a long name, unconventional to how companies, kind of want to keep their names. But we felt it really that, it is what we are doing and this describes us. So that's how we went ahead with that.
That's excellent. I really do love that name. It is kind of on point with what you do and what you're trying to do. So I really love that was the decision that you made on that. But I do want to shift gears just a little bit here. We've talked a lot about just mental health as a whole, the industry thereof, and ManoShala. But I'd love to learn a little bit more about kind of how you've changed in your leadership style and you've grown throughout your journey with ManoShala. And what are some of the biggest lessons you can provide some insight into as you went through this entrepreneurial journey and as you're growing and as you're scaling?
First thing I want to mention is that idea is not a problem. The problem is consistency with anyone, any founder or anyone sitting in the leadership position. So a lot of people start a lot of companies or a lot of things with a lot of enthusiasm in the beginning, and they are trying to solve the right problem also. But the thing is that you have to do it consistently every day with the same kind of effort. So lesson number one for me and anyone who's kind of in the journey of being an entrepreneur is to decide that are they dedicating their life, effort, time to something which they will be able to do consistently. When I say consistently, that basically means every day. They have to do it every day. I don't know till when, but they have to do it every day. No matter the work is small, the work is big, the task is small, no matter, nothing matters. What matters is that you are doing it every day. Number one is that. Number two is when you are in your entrepreneurial journey, you are not the boss. You are basically doing everything for everyone in the initial years. Do not think that this is not my work or this is something my EA should do or this is my salesperson should do. No, wherever they need help, you are the person who's supposed to help them no matter what. So, second is that is anyone coming to you with any question, you are the person who's going to answer it no matter you know it or you don't know it. Number third is your team. Your team, not just the skill of the team, but the trust of the team on you and the cause. Very important. If they are not able to connect with the cause, they will not sustain in the system. Because building a startup takes something which is beyond the normal working hours or normal passion or normal dedication that you have towards your different companies that you're working for. Number fourth is your financial stability. You need to know where your money is coming from. You need to know where are you earning this money from, where is this money going. So you need to be very clear about where is this money coming from. Number fifth is there is no way that you can bullshit your journey via being an entrepreneur. There is no way. There are real problems coming to you everyday basis. There are real situations, difficult situations. Sometimes you have to pivot last minute. Sometimes you have to change your decision completely in the last minute, last second also. There is no way that you can bullshit. And number six is that don't get into the burnout for yourself. I also tend to do that. I'm learning that don't go 16 hours, 18 hours because it's not one day. It's like, a lot of people say it's a marathon. It's really a marathon. It's not a one day thing. You can work for 16 hours, 18 hours for 15 days, but what about 16th day? You have to do it goddamn for rest of your life. So how do you think that within 16 days you'll be able to do it? So have that patience. Know that you are a human and work accordingly, but yes, consistently every day. There are a lot of things that I can say, frankly, because this is my journey. I'm living it right now. So there are a lot of things I can talk about it. But anything specific that you would want me to emphasize on, that will be lovely. Any maybe some financial something or anything that you would like me to talk more about.
The way that you talk about this is like any fantastic self-help author. And I hope that you take that as the compliment that it's meant as. So someday I definitely expect a book from you and we're all going to buy it because the way that you articulate your lessons learned is amazing. And maybe this is also because you're in the mental health space. And so you think more reflectively than most people really do about, your own leadership. But I really like you articulating. This is the first time I've really heard someone talk about like how you're not the boss. You're the person to support your entire team, no matter what. And I think I'm really going to take that to heart. But thank you so much for sharing all of those lessons learned with us. So when you were talking about, how you really have to pace yourself and this is a marathon, I think a lot of us ride that line between like, I should just keep go because I'm so in the moment with this. I don't want to lose momentum. And like you said, this isn't sustainable. So I'd like to kind of ask you personally how you maintain work-life balance, because you also shared at the beginning of this that you're moving right now and your husband is in the military. And I can only imagine how crazy it is for you guys to balance everything. So is there any sort of go-to strategy that you have, as an entrepreneur, as a, wife of someone that has a very flexible job, I guess, to put it nicely? How do you find that balance for yourself?
So there is no permanent way to kind of find a balance for myself right now. This is what I feel. What I think is that what is working for me right now from last 2-3 years, because, when I built up my company, when I was starting my company, that's the year when I got married. So, was my marriage, it was my company beginning, and then our first posting came, then now we're in the middle of a second posting. So yes, a lot of personal commitments are coming my way right now, and no doubt on that. But what really helped me to kind of do a work-life balance is know my goals, know my company goals. Like, this is what I want to do, and not fall in the trap of comparing ManoShala's progress with the companies who are there 7-8 years in India. You got to know that you are working on this, and you got to know that, and of course, this is not easy. This may sound very, this thing, oh, she knows everything. No, I don't know. I have to kind of keep looking at my goals again and again. There are the genuinely low times personally or professionally that I have to kind of go through. But the idea is to keep coming back to your goals. Keep coming back. Okay, this is what we decided. So I'll tell you, like you said, my husband is in government services in India. So we have to move out of this house in 2 days and go to a new place altogether, which is a bit far away from here. And my app launch is happening in 10 days. So of course, I have 2 very, very important events coming in my life. But I think what is helping me to be calm about this entire situation is very solid team who can back me up right now. And a very solid understanding that, 10 days to go and I have my things settled. Like, in terms of that, okay, this time is for this time is for this time is for this. Now, of course, all of a sudden our posting has come and I have to kind of accommodate these 2 days. And I was panicking in the afternoon that how am I going to do this, that. I again sat down with myself, looked at the goals that I want to achieve in the next 10 days, not thinking about what happens after 10 days, because right now my first milestone is that 10th of October, my app goes live and it's launched. That is my goal. So I need to think about only those things. So what really helps during work-life balance, I feel generally, is also that be aware about your goals. I'm not saying that you don't compare your life with other people, or you don't compare, like I am very competitive. My company is very competitive. I know that. But at the same time, when I am going that spiral which goes down inside, that time just remember your goals. Go back to your goals. Refer to what you decided and where you are. I think that really helps. That has helped me personally every time to maintain that work-life balance. Okay, for example, have a personal commitment at 8 p.m. and I achieve all my goals by 7 p.m. Or do I need to stretch that? Or am I stretching just because I'm the founder and I want to do everything? I need to step down and look at my goals. I think that really helps. To me, that really helps.
That's excellent. I think that's a great point too. And I mean, I think it's extremely easy for, at least I know myself, to get caught up in that idea that, I've got to do everything. I've got to get things done, running into extremely late nights / early mornings, trying to put everything in place. And certainly areas suffer because of that, right? And so I love that you found that process that works for you of really just saying, okay, what do the next 10 days look like? And I actually feel like I should probably adopt that. What do my next 10 days look like? And what do I need to get done? And then break it down into smaller chunks on almost a daily basis. I love that that's kind of the process you found to work for yourself. So thank you for sharing. And I think as we come to kind of the end of the hour here, there is one question that we always end with. And so I'll ask that here is, if there is one thing that you can leave with the community as a takeaway or words of wisdom, perhaps, what would that be and why?
I think before I answer that question, there is this question from Manas from India. He has asked that my question is, how have you measured on your impact and outcome? Can I answer this question before I answer your question?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I didn't see it in the discussion boards. That was probably my fault. So go ahead. Yeah.
The answer is that if you have set your goals, you kind of know what the outcome that you want or what is the impact that you want to create, and you measure it against that. So the idea is that you know what you want to do. That's a very large question also, because that applies personally also and professionally also. Maybe you are doing a lot of profits that you decided, but you are not creating impact. That's a question for you, that you in this for profits, are you in this for impact, or are you in this for both? And you are only focusing on one. So you need to know personally as a founder, yes, you need money for your business, but is impact important to you? So what I'm trying to say is that not just the professional goals, but have your personal goals in place, that why did you start this company in the first place, and measure your success against that. So for the impact, for your satisfaction, and also for the company profits and the team that you're building. Team is very important. I hope I have answered that question. If there's any follow-up question, I would be very happy to answer that as well. Now coming on to Ray's question, what is that one thing I want to leave everybody with? Yes. I think I know what I want to leave everyone with. It's basically that keep going. So that's my motto of life. That's how I live. Keep going, and double quotes, keep going. That basically means that whatever you are doing, there are going to be low times, there are going to be great times. Just keep going. For about a year or so, I had this thing on my phone which just said, keep going, Kratika. And I think I just want to leave everyone today with this thought to guys, whatever you are trying in your life, just know that you have to keep going. And that really works. So especially, when I have been at times when I feel, oh my God, I think this company is going down. There is so much of competition. There is so much of price point competition in India. I don't think so I can survive because this is bloody goddamn bootstrap sustainable company. People are funding the companies, right? And how am I going to make it? Then I tell myself that Kratika, keep going. Just keep going. So I think that is definitely a line that I want everyone to think when they're in the low times of their lives, be it professional or personal. Just keep going, guys. It'll happen.
That's such good advice, pairing that with the other advice you gave us, which was to, make sure that you're measuring your success by, am I really, well, you can correct me if I'm articulating this poorly, but, measuring your success by like, am I really pursuing the thing that I'm passionate about? Am I really making that happen before all the other wonderful things that I need to make happen? So thank you so much. When Matt asked you that question about your lessons learned, you gave me like so much wisdom. I'm definitely going to have to make sure that we get this edited in short order so I can re-listen to it and take from it. And congratulations on being so close to the launch of your app. If people want to connect with you outside this conversation, how should they do that? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Reach out to me on my email. I can just put it there for everyone, maybe on the chat or anything. It's just simply kratika@manoshala.com or LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I try to respond to each and every person.
Well, that's pretty amazing. I'm sure that you get a lot of LinkedIn messages. I really want to thank you so much for taking so much time with us today. And I also want you to think about maybe coming back in a couple of months after the launch of your app, because we would really love to hear how that goes. And in the meantime, we definitely want to be supportive of your journey. So please let us know if you need anything at all, because we have a global network with just got a small number of us represented here, but that is really the power of this network, in my opinion. So definitely keep us posted on how we can support you personally and professionally at this time. Thank you again so much for taking so much time with us. Thank you everyone else who joined and took time to listen to Kratika, and please feel free to join us in the future if you do have time on a Saturday so that we can kind of continue this collaborative learning journey together. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day. You've just finished another episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The team at Founders Voyage wants to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and if so, please share this with someone else who might enjoy this podcast. You can also support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and by donating to our Patreon. Outro music today is Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.